For a second straight day, President Trump is refusing to commit to a peaceful transition of power if he loses. The president has repeated unfounded assertions of a scam being run by the Democrats in the election. He is casting baseless doubts on the safety of voting this fall, particularly mail-in ballots. Top Republicans are scrambling to reassure the American people that they don't need to worry. The Senate unanimously passed a resolution to reaffirm support for a peaceful transition yesterday. House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy backed those efforts while simultaneously dismissing the president's comments.
Let me be very clear to you. It will be peaceful. I know you want to create a hypothetical, and that's good for you, but no questions, no qualms, no concerns. It's going to be peaceful. This nation is designed that way. This nation will have it that way. And that's exactly what will take place.
CBS News White House correspondent Ben Tracy has more on the president's hesitation.
We love Hispanic Americans. Wow.
At a rally in Florida last night, there were few masks, but plenty of attacks on the president's opponent, Joe Biden.
A lit is when you put out word you're not going to be campaigning today. So he does a lit all the time. I'm working my ass off.
With new polls showing President Trump trailing Biden in several swing states, he again suggested he might not accept the outcome of the election.
We want to make sure the election is honest, and I'm not sure that it can be. I don't know that it can be.
Even though Vice President Mike Pence insisted in Wisconsin they would, on one condition.
We will accept free and fair election results.
A day earlier, the president would not commit to a peaceful transfer of power.
Well, we're going to have to see what happens. You know that.
President Trump, you are not a dictator.
On Thursday, Democrats and several Republican leaders put the president on notice.
Look, we've had an orderly transfer of power every 4 years since Washington was selected for a second term in 1792. That will happen again to the winner of the November 3rd election.
The president, who was loudly booed at the Supreme Court as he paid his respects to the late Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, continues to claim mail-in ballots lead to widespread fraud. But his own FBI director testified on Capitol Hill, saying that's simply not true.
We have not seen, historically, any kind of coordinated national voter fraud effort in a major election, whether it's by mail or otherwise.
I will never let the radical left take away your health care.
In North Carolina Thursday, the president unveiled what he calls his vision for health care. But it's really an executive order directing Congress to pass legislation to deal with surprise medical billing. It also makes protecting pre-existing conditions official U.S. policy.
This is affirmed, signed, and done, so we can put that to rest.
And Ben Tracy joins me now from the White House. Hi, Ben. We heard the president again casting doubts on mail-in voting and the safety of the 2020 election. But just yesterday, he tweeted to encourage Florida voters to request their own vote-by-mail ballots. So what appears to be the goal with these comments when his tweet makes clear he doesn't fully believe mail-in voting is unsafe?
Well, there's a couple things at play here. Democrats would tell you that they believe the president is trying to sow doubts about the outcome of the election. So if he loses the election, he then has some reason, some basis for challenging it. So that would be to go after mail-in ballots, absentee ballots, whatever ballots that he thinks may be fraudulent or were counted incorrectly. So that's one thing. When it comes to Florida, that does seem like a contradiction, and it is one. I did ask the White House yesterday during the press briefing about that. Why is the president tweeting that out to tell people to vote by mail in Florida? The answer of the White House is that they feel like Florida has a long history dealing with mail-in ballots, and therefore they can handle that. The president also makes a distinction between absentee ballots and what they call mass mail-in voting. Those two things are not remarkably different, because when you talk about mass mail-in voting, basically states that are sending out a ballot to everyone in the state, they're sending out a ballot to every registered voter in the state, not every adult or sometimes, as you've heard from the president, dog, cat, dead person, all of that. You know, there's a lot of opinions about these ballots and what the president's really talking about. But Democrats would tell you that they think he's trying to sow doubt.
And Ben, White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows defended the president's refusal to commit to a peaceful transition of power if he loses the 2020 election. He also blasted FBI Director Christopher Wray's testimony about there being no evidence of widespread voter fraud. Let's listen to what he said.
Well, with all due respect to Director Wray, he has a hard time finding emails in his own FBI, let alone figuring out whether there's any kind of voter fraud. This is a very different case. The rules are being changed. And so what I'm suggesting is perhaps he can drill down on the investigation that just started. Others that we're seeing in North Carolina and other places where multiple ballots, duplicate ballots are being sent out. Perhaps he needs to get involved on the ground, and then he would change his testimony on Capitol Hill.
So, Ben, set the record straight for us here. Is there any evidence of voter fraud on the scale the president and Meadows are referring to? And if not, why not trust the FBI?
There is not, and that is what the FBI director testified to under oath on Capitol Hill. He basically said there's no evidence of widespread voter fraud via mail or any other way. That's just not something, thankfully, that's been a huge issue in the country until now. The argument the White House is making is that several states are expanding vote by mail this year. Some had planned to do that anyway. Others are doing it because of coronavirus and people's desire to not have to go vote in person because of their health. So that's where that is coming from. But we should mention there are 5 states in this country that do all of their elections entirely by mail, and there have been very few documented problems with that. So this is just not a problem that exists to the level that the president and the White House and his campaign are trying to make it sound.
All right, Ben, I want to switch gears to health care. Does the president's executive order actually guarantee the protection of pre-existing conditions? And then how does it contradict his Justice Department's approach toward the Affordable Care Act?
The executive order does not do that. It does not guarantee that. It's also unnecessary because it's already the law of the United States that pre-existing conditions are protected. That was signed into law by President Obama 10 years ago when he signed the Affordable Care Act. So what the president was doing yesterday was making a political point. He knows that something that's very, very popular in the Affordable Care Act, even amongst those who don't like it, are the protections for pre-existing conditions. So the president was trying to make a point of showing that he's going to keep those. The reason he felt the need to do that is because the administration is actually fighting for the Supreme Court to overturn the Affordable Care Act, which would do away with those protections. So what the president is saying there is that if the court rules in our favor and we get rid of Obamacare, we will still protect pre-existing conditions. The unfortunate thing the president did not mention is that he cannot do that by executive order. He would need Congress to pass a law to actually do that. That's the law that's currently on the books. But if that is undone by the court, then Congress would have to fix that.
Right. And Ben, Democrats did win back the House in 2018, large part by emphasizing health care protections. They're doing it again by tying the Affordable Care Act to the president's Supreme Court pick. We heard House Speaker Nancy Pelosi do that on CBS this morning. Let's listen to what she said.
Within just a couple of hours after the announcement of her passing, the Majority Leader McConnell said, we're going to take this up and vote on it, which is so inappropriate. Without going into that, what is important for everyone to know in America is what it means to them. This rush to appoint someone to be there in time for the November 10th arguments against and before the court will make the case, the administration will make the case against the Affordable Care Act. So if anybody in your family has a pre-existing condition, that benefit will be gone.
So, Ben, does the Trump campaign fear the 2020 election could become a referendum on health care? Because that certainly hasn't been a winning issue for Republicans in the past.
Yeah, it certainly doesn't help. I don't think they think that this is going to come down to health care. I mean, given what's going on in the country right now with coronavirus, the economy, this kind of referendum on President Trump himself, I don't think they view this as a single issue election at this point. But certainly the Democrats would love to make this a real focus. And you're right that this certainly helped them during the midterms. And you've seen Joe Biden do this as well. The day that he came out responding to the death of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg and talking about Republicans not filling getting that seat and letting the next president decide that, he linked that very directly to health care. And he said to people, here's what's at stake. Your health care is at stake. The overturn of the Affordable Care Act. And he went through a litany of other things. So this is certainly a case that he's going to want to make on the campaign trail. Will it become the defining issue of this campaign with less than 40 days? I guess that remains to be seen. But certainly that is an effort the Democrats are going to make.
All right. Well, Ben Tracy at the White House, thank you so much.
Thanks.